Welcome to this short video about drafting a research question, brought to you by the Writing Center. Keep in mind that writing a research question, researching relevant articles or information, and applying a theory or performing a study are not independent activities. You need to do at least some research, meaning finding relevant articles or information. If you're called on to use a theory, deciding which one you're going to use, and for some studies, deciding on your method before you write your research question. Your first attempt is going to be a draft question, and keep in mind that you may need to revise it as you perform your study and do your research. So some of the steps you may have to take are research to find out what's feasible, drafting a question, doing some more research, revising your question, and repeating these steps in any order. A research question should be open-ended. In other words, when you write the question, you don't already know the answer. Secondly, you're ready to explore. You're not preparing to argue. You're going to be keeping an open mind as you perform your research to take into account all the possibilities because you're going to go where the evidence leads you. In other words, you haven't made up your mind what the answer is before you begin. Open-ended means just that. Whenever I set my own students an open-ended research question to write, in opposition to a thesis statement, they're often confused about what I mean because they're used to thesis statements and they're used to arguing. So for this slide and the next one, I'm going to demonstrate the difference between a thesis statement and a research question. So to begin, a thesis statement comes in the introduction to your paper, and it states the position you're going to argue throughout the paper. The thesis statement provides the answer to the question you're attempting to answer. That is, a thesis statement assumes you've already done the research and you're ready to answer the question. In essence, as you write the draft of a paper, you find the answer to the question you're trying to answer at the end of your draft. You're going to move it to the introduction once you're finished writing. And that becomes your thesis statement. Throughout the paper, you provide evidence to support the argument given in the thesis statement at the beginning. In other words, a thesis statement sets out an argumentative position and assumes that you already know the answer. That's what you're going to argue throughout the paper, and that's the evidence you're going to provide. Writing a research question is very different because, for one thing, when you write the research question, you don't know the answer yet. You're not arguing. You're not trying to prove a point. Think about words like exploring and searching when you write your research question. You're not looking for evidence to confirm a position that you've already taken up. You yourself must be open-minded, and your question should reflect that. You are going to go where the evidence takes you, even if that's an unexpected direction. In other words, you're supposed to be exploring, looking for data or evidence, and examining that data or evidence for what it tells us. In other words, through your research, you will arrive at an answer, but you don't know that answer in the beginning when you draft your question. Your research question should not have a yes/no answer. That is, you shouldn't create one that can be answered with yes or no. The reason it's problematic to create a yes/no question is because you're not asking the right question. It means that you're trying to argue. It means you're limiting the possible answers to only two, and that's yes or no. Whereas generally speaking, when we write a research question, it's because we're attempting to explore. And the possible answers are multiple, We just don't know what they are yet. Writing a yes/no question means you'll probably skew the data because you've already made up your mind what the answer is. And with a good research question, you can't make up your mind because you don't know the answer yet. So, open-ended research questions usually start with one of these words. What, why, how? And I see I have what written twice. That's fine. Where can also be acceptable depending on the context and your topic. Which can also be acceptable, also depending on the context. But what, how, and where usually mean that you're going to come up with an open-ended, responsible question that you can then explore to arrive at an answer. So just a reminder, it takes work to arrive at questions such as these ones, and even these questions may need to be narrowed down further. The first example I have is how are Indigenous women represented in Canadian mainstream news media today? If you think about this, your research paragraph would have to explain why such representations are important or significant, which theory and/or method you'll use for your analysis, and which news organizations you'll study for what time period. So you may need to narrow this down a bit, but it is an open-ended question. It doesn't have a yes/no answer. There is no ready answer available. You can't Google search this one, and this will lead to a good exploration. Here's a second example of an open-ended research question. What impact has the COVID-19 lockdown had on racialized working mothers in Canada? Once again, you can tell this is an open-ended question. We can't answer it with a yes or no. We don't know the answer. We can't Google the answer to find one. And this question leads to a good sound exploration. Please note, however, that because COVID-19 is a recent phenomenon, you may need to do additional research to find out if materials are available yet about the COVID-19 lockdowns and their potential impacts. Neither of those preceding two questions could be answered with a yes or no. And as I said, we cannot find an answer to them by doing a Google search. Both of them ask you to explore, to gather data or perform an analysis, and to think about the research you've collected through articles, data gathering, and analysis to come up with an answer. So in summary, when you are attempting to write your research question, make sure that it is open-ended, that it can't be answered with a yes or no, that we can't answer it just by doing a Google search, that research is available that will enable you to answer the question, and that the question itself is narrow enough in scope to be answerable in the space of the paper. As always, the Writing Center can help, and we welcome you to come and visit us for a free 50-minute video chat with a writing expert, or a 15-minute drop-in for quick questions. You can also come to our workshops. You can visit our homepage to find out about all of the learning opportunities we offer, or you can search on Writing Center for York's site. Remember that writing is learning for life, and that you are always welcome to come and visit and see us. Thanks for listening to this video brought to you by the Writing Center.